And welcome to the Fantasy Formula One podcast, where we use fake money to buy real F1 teams to win imaginary points. All right, so we got a lot to talk about with the Mexican Grand Prix.
Yeah.
Max was a bully.
Sure.
He was an absolute bully. He got 2 10-second penalties based on his interactions over like half of a lap with Lando Norris.
Mm-hmm.
But that really screwed Max's race. He still managed to come back and place in P6. But it screwed over his race, and Lando defending him and going wheel to wheel with Max screwed up Lando's race.
I think there's a whole discussion that could be had about racer attitude, across the grid. You're not going to make it as a Formula One driver if you are not aggressive. You know, you have to have nerves of steel. You're going to 200 plus miles an hour on these wildly different courses that you have to have down to perfection. That it's going to be a challenge if you're the only car on the track, let alone one of 20. So you have to be willing to assert yourself. And there's always this dance of, at what point am I being too aggressive, and at what point am I being reckless with the lives of other drivers? And that can be such a fine line. So with Max, you can't be as good as he is without being aggressive. Similarly, though, you had the comments from Lando between Texas and Mexico saying this is unacceptable. He should never have done that. And Max's response was, got it. It was unacceptable. That's why I got penalized. Why are we talking about this? It's every action comes with a certain amount of risk. He took the risk. He got slapped on the wrist for it. So it's not a matter of class or classlessness or a lack of care for the other driver. It's he was doled out a little bit of punishment. I think that was requisite with the level of infraction that he committed.
As soon as we're driving in our regular cars on the regular street and we're going 5 miles over the speed limit, we're willing to accept the risk of getting a speeding ticket.
That took its toll in Mexico, where Max Verstappen ended up in 6th place, and he was by far the best Red Bull driver that day. I think that kind of impact is going to leave a lot more of a mark on Max than the lack of camaraderie between he and Norris. And don't get me wrong, I think you look at the life of a Formula One driver, you're traveling the world for 9 months out of the year with the same cast of characters, more or less. So, friendships are going to form. There's going to be a certain understanding that forms between these people who have an experience that 99.999% of the world will never get to experience in a similar way. So, there's going to come a knowledge and a familiarity with that. Because before and after the race, you're out partying in some exotic locale with these same people week in and week out. So feelings are going to flare up. Relationships may impact things a little bit, but at the end of the day, you're there to race, and you're there to race hard.
As soon as not being aggressive and I'm not going to wheel with you, well, then you're going to probably lose respect for me.
Sure.
Because we're both at this level, and we're both meat eaters, and it would affect the camaraderie off the track.
Sure.
Because it's probably much different, to your point, friendship, than you and I are used to not being F1 drivers.
Well, and that's exactly it. That camaraderie also has to be so short-lived, because if you have the staying power to be a Max Verstappen or look how many people has Lewis Hamilton seen come and go.
Oh, so
just
many.
Season by season. The fact that he's still around, the fact that Alonso's still around. You don't last long as a Formula One driver. Last year, Sergio Perez was the number 2 driver all season long, and look, we're dumping on him this year.
On him. Yeah, that's in my notes to dump on him next.
Well,
exactly.
That's coming. But again, last year it was Max and then everyone else, but Perez was at the top of that list.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
So it's the falls from grace are fairly common in this sport.
Okay, so we're gonna jump right into what went on with the race when it comes to Perez, since
Absolutely.
we just touched on him.
Yeah.
So he got a false start penalty. Drove up, his tires rolled ahead and was outside of the box, so he got his false start penalty. All back of the pack.
Ended up finishing 17th. Yeah.
2 laps down, I think. It was just bad. And that was...
Well, everyone behind him was a DNF.
That's true.
So that's... So for all intents and purposes, he was last.
It was just bad.
Yeah.
It was just bad. And Liam Lawson, I know that was one of the things that you and I talked about before we started recording, and it's all over the social medias and all over the rumor mill, is that Liam Lawson is talking with Christian Horner about, well, I mean,
Or being talked to
being
by
talked
Chris
to by
Horner.
Christian
Yeah.
Horner. And regardless of who's talking to who, I think it's safe to assume that after a performance like that, there is no way, like Red Bull has to be having the conversation with itself of how much money are we willing to eat, in Sergio Perez's contract to
Yeah.
get a new driver in here, because he's not competing. And
As of right now, he is still under contract through next season.
okay,
But
there's got to be escape
they can
clauses
always
in that.
yeah no they can always drop him.
We used to quip that Ferrari was neck and neck with McLaren, with neck and neck with Mercedes.
Yep.
And it was Red Bull and McLaren. Well, that's shifted now. So as far as fantasy points go, in Mexico, Ferrari got 82. McLaren got 73. So pretty close.
Yeah.
Red Bull got 41. Mercedes got 51. Haas got 34.
That's surprising.
Haas is literally within 10 points of Red Bull in fantasy points for last race. And I know there's a big asterisk there.
Oh, sure.
Well, it's not real race. It's just fantasy land and passing and overtaking and da-da-da. Yeah, absolutely. That's the game we're playing.
And the final asterisk too is on any given week, you could easily have a Haas DNF or a Haas crash of some kind. So this is only happening this week because Verstappen got 6th and Perez got 17th.
Verstappen got 6th in, how about this? Verstappen got 6th in Mexico.
Yeah.
He got 4th in Texas. He got 5th in Azerbaijan, and he got 6th in Italy. But Sainz got 6th in Italy. Sorry, got 4th in Italy, 18th in Azerbaijan. That stinks. 2nd in Texas, 1st in Mexico. Leclerc, 1st in Italy, 2nd in Azerbaijan, 1st in Texas, 3rd in Mexico.
Dang.
So I know I just threw a bunch of words at you without a chart. The punchline is that Ferrari is having sustained superior performance with both of their drivers.
Absolutely.
As far as constructors, over the last 3 races, here we go. McLaren has scored 234 points. Ferrari has scored 228 points over the last 3 races. So neck and neck.
Yeah.
So McLaren and Ferrari are now spoken in the same breath, not as far as fantasy points goes, not McLaren and Red Bull. Red Bull has 106 points.
It's
160 points, pardon.
No, that's right. That's still
But
a huge difference.
Huge difference. And Mercedes has 136. McLaren and Ferrari have all the trends, all the numbers, all the everything for both drivers and for both for the constructors and for both drivers.
Based on everything you're telling me here, the last 2 weeks, I really haven't touched my teams that much. It's been a fairly solid split of it's been Ferrari and someone from McLaren or Ferrari and someone from Mercedes. That was working about a month and a half ago. I'm starting to think if Mercedes is still solid, but as far as fantasy points, there are too many higher performers. So if there's any way I can finagle getting someone from McLaren, but even that isn't as sure of a thing as it was because, what I'd been preaching, again, still as the very much new guy. So don't worry, everyone. I still know my place as, this is my first season ever doing this. But the gap between Norris and Piastri is widening. Again, I still have full faith in Piastri. This is his 2nd season ever, and oh my goodness, what a career so far. However, the difference between the two is starting to show quite a bit more. And so before, I know I was very much on board with go ahead and just take Piastri. He'll save you a couple million, and he'll win every once in a while. But Norris is the clear stronger performer at this point, and so I think refocusing in on Ferrari, that you and I were both hot on Ferrari, and they had a pretty rough mid-season, but the last month and a half, man, they've just been just unstoppable. And so I haven't looked up the points, but when we were talking about Red Bull so dominant in the first 7-8 weeks, then ceding constructor control to McLaren. I think at this pace and at this point, if they haven't already, they're going to fall to 3rd place on beneath Ferrari.
In the last 3 races, Leclerc has 111 points. Sainz is 2nd with 107. Verstappen is 4th with 87 points, and Norris is 3rd with 94.
Interesting.
So what does that mean? That means that the whole idea of having Norris and Piastri be the prize fantasy F1 drivers right now isn't the way it is. It's really looking grand. They just had a couple good races, and sure, Max Verstappen and Lando Norris were going wheel to wheel and killed each other's races.
Sure.
But still, we can't ignore the fact that Piastri and Sainz and Leclerc are just winning.
Okay, so we had hit on a couple of things before. We were talking about driver attitude. And then we were talking about, Red Bull dominance early on, juxtaposed with where we stand right now. I'd like to talk a little bit about. We had Lawson in 16th place, and then Perez in 17th place, and then Liam Lawson getting pulled aside by Christian Horner. Again, who knows what was actually said between the two? So to clarify, Liam Lawson is one of three mid-season replacement drivers, coming in for VCarb, and he's made some splashes. He's had some solid races based on the limitations of the platform he's driving. But it's VCarb is the baby RB scout team essentially for Red Bull. However, they are still established independent constructors from one another. I'm saying so like VCarb versus Red Bull, and so Liam Lawson still got 16th place, which isn't fantastic, but he doggedly defended his position against Sergio Perez. They are not teammates, but should he have given way for Sergio Perez?
I think it was brilliant that he didn't. So Liam Lawson, and I only know this based on just from watching him race. Yeah. Again, my master's degree in creative writing is making me try and figure out a fun way to express this. He is irreverently aggressive. He doesn't care about your class or your title or your reputation. He did not care that Sergio Perez was trying to pass him. Sergio Perez came to try and pass him, and he went wheel to wheel. Sergio Perez pushed him off the track. Lawson pushed Sergio Perez back off the track. Perez got damaged during that interaction. So like Liam Lawson is racing like he's going for Sergio Perez's spot. And as soon as Sergio Perez was like, hey, here I come, look at me, I'm Sergio Perez, in a Red Bull, because again, in this race, the Red Bulls were just passing people. Like when Max Verstappen was coming up, people would try and defend for a little bit, but then they just let Max pass him because Max eventually would. Lawson just put out his elbows and held off Checo.
Yeah. No, I mean, and it's interesting. I think with you as the writer, you've got such great narrative elements here, because here you've got Perez in kind of a fall from grace season. Yeah. This is his home race in Mexico. And then there's it's the I'm the established vet versus you're the rookie. However, you turn the camera back onto Liam Lawson, who's been waiting for his turn for 2 years after proving himself as a potentially capable driver, who is probably at the very, very limit of his patience in terms of I need to start shopping my skill set around to whatever constructor will actually take me seriously. And so he's coming out and saying, you know what? So yeah, 16th place sucks, but I'm going to get 16th place if it means I don't have to get 17th place, which again, we were talking earlier, the attitude you have to have nerves of steel as a Formula One driver. You have to be willing to push back a little bit. And again, I think there is a place for knowing your place as the new guy. And if that was me, that shows up in the form of like, if all the drivers are going out to dinner one night, I'm buying everyone around because I'm the new guy. Yeah. But then on the track, I'm gonna place as high as humanly possible and show that I deserve to be there. And I like the standpoint that I don't care who you are, I am here too.
Especially against the guy who's arguably on the chopping block, who in a perfect world you would take their seat.
Yeah, the dream is to take his spot.
Oh yeah,
and also for the record, right now, Perez at the beginning of this season signed a 2-year contract.
Okay,
with a base salary of $14 million per year. Jeez. Plus an immediately payable $11 million signing bonus. So just from this season, he's got because math $25 million, and he's due another 14 if he stays with Red Bull next year. Wow. So and good for him. Like he made good on last year. But but that was last year,
And
man.
then
You
as soon
know?
as you're Red Bull, again, I don't know. I haven't looked at Red Bull's books, but I wonder how much they would have to pay of his contract anyway if they let him go.
Oh, sure.
And
Yeah.
then as soon as you're like, all right, we can take Liam Lawson, we can take somebody who is driving better than you are in a vastly
I mean,
inferior car. You
you,
have to have that conversation.
you could pay Liam or Yuki probably half of that, and
Yeah.
so like whatever they have to eat to let him go, maybe,
Yeah.
and test out some new blood, because obviously Max isn't going anywhere. You got to make
No.
sure you're hiring fancier physicists and engineers for for a better
Right.
for a better car next year. But
Well, and Yuki didn't have, so that's an interesting thing to touch on there. So Yuki spun out and crashed.
oh, that's true. He's one of the
Turn
he was
lap
one of the
one.
3 DNFs. It
Yeah,
was
he
him,
was.
Albon, and Alonso.
Alonso. So Alonso just had a mechanical failure. That was
Okay.
it. Was just a thing. He was driving, and they're like, "And Alonso's in the pits. He's retiring because his car's jacked up."
Yeah, and that's
Paraphrasing greatly.
That's and that's been a unfortunate summary of the year for
Yeah.
Aston Martin. Like, what a cool car, what a neat company. Except for Lance Stroll, no one likes you, Lance Stroll. It's
Yeah.
it's unfortunate, but it's just not been a competitive year. That strictly, there is a middle of the road, and then there is much worse and
Mhm.
much better.
With Yuki Tsunoda getting a DNF turn one, lap one, and then Liam Lawson having a struggling race because of damage and because of everything like that. Haas passed VCarb in the Constructors Championship real world.
Oh,
So
wow.
Haas is now P6 in the Constructors Championship with 46 points. VCarb is P7 with 36.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to be competitive when you get P16 and DNF.
And you're losing to Haas in the championship. The powers that be have to be sitting there and talking about that and figuring out what's going on.
Yeah, but at the same time, like with Haas, it feels like they have tried everything else at always the worst times, So like you said, it's lack of resources, lack of capabilities, and then they tried the whole let's try nothing but young blood experiment, and that didn't work with Mazepin and who's the other the legacy hire Schumacher's son. And so they just had kind of really bad luck of the draw there, and then you get two veterans, one with, again, middling results historically with Kevin Magnussen. Like, he was actually out of Formula One for a year, and then Nico Hulkenberg, who's like, he's like the former child star, where it was like you can only trade on your potential for so long. I mean, and again, you feel bad for the guy because here he's been in Formula One. Is this his 8th, 9th season, and he's never been on the podium, which is that's got to hurt your heart a little bit, No, and that's the thing. It's like you're always showing capability, but it's either the car or the circumstances, or I don't know what it is. It's just like his time never really came, So, but again, so that makes this season so much more compelling for Haas, because there have been a couple of those outlier races where Magnussen briefly lost his license, and there are a couple random DNFs, but then they've each had individually brilliant races based on the limited resources that they have. So it's been really cool to see them come out of that laughing stock form. And and it's wild to look back, again, from knowing nothing about this sport to seeing a little bit of their history. Like, Williams used to be a championship team, and and you're seeing glimmers of hope again for a down the road bit of momentum. Alpine was Renault, which was like, if Drive to Survive is to be believed, like 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, like, was a bit of a rivalry, and now look at just the separation between the two. You wonder what Kick Sauber's going to do as Team Audi next year. But like, it's fun to see these beefs arrive or else kind of fall by the wayside with every turnover of team principals and these new drivers.
Yeah.
So
and that's a strategy for next year that I'm going to entertain, is having at least one or two of the builds be okay, Ferrari with McLaren, let it ride unless there's an issue.
Yeah.
Here is, Red Bull and McLaren, depending on how the price breaks, and if Liam Lawson starts driving for Perez, let it ride and just kind of see how it goes.
Sure.
Because to prevent it, they had a great race and they went up 5 million, like $500,000. Okay, I want to buy in. Then they had a bad race. They went down 0.2 million. Oh, I should probably sell out. And it's like, and it's like stock market it's killing me.
Yeah. Whatever you're going to do with your drivers, McLaren is a solid constructor that outside of Ferrari, you're not going to find a better scoring constructor. Switch some things around, make some daring, sexy moves, but keep them as your constructor because they're both usually in the top end of the top 10 with a couple outliers.
Yeah.
Then the questions get tough. Like, so ideally I'd say get McLaren as a constructor, get Ferrari as a constructor. If you're going to ask me whether you should run Sainz or Leclerc because you probably can't afford both simultaneously, I can't tell you who's going to do better in a given week. I think Leclerc is as usual the more consistent pick, but Sainz is the more exciting pick.
And I heard the announcers on F1.com talking about this, so I don't know much about it. I'll have to research. If anybody out there knows more about this, then tell me. But hashtag like and subscribe. But the way the contracts work is he's not. I guess Sergio Perez might not be. I don't want to say for sure because I don't know. Sergio Perez might not be contracted to race on Red Bull Racing Team. He might be contracted to race for Red Bull.
Oh, I see.
So
that would be interesting.
There is a non-zero chance that they just swap the drivers, put Lawson in the Red Bull Racing car, and just put Perez into V-Carb.
I gotcha.
They probably could do that.
Yeah.
I don't know all the stipulations behind it, but if they did that, I don't know how I'd feel if I was Perez.
Out of left field, apparently Brad Pitt was at Texas, and so they filmed a scene for his movie that comes out his Formula One movie that comes out next year, being produced by Lewis Hamilton's production company, because that's what he does in his off time. So there was, and the scene was very simple. It was just him. It was just Brad Pitt coming out of his car, which is all like black and gold. It's a really good looking F1 car, and you can see like the film crew member like hyping up the crowd to like cheer at a certain time, and he waves at the crowd and walks off, and that was it. But you got to get to see Brad Pitt step out of a car, so that was interesting.
All right, well, do you have any parting shots for save rounds before we call it?
I've got nothing further. If you are one of the people who have stuck with us this long, we love you. Thank you so much for hanging with us. We like talking about this stuff, and hope that whatever you're working on today as you listen, whether it be mowing the lawn or getting some work done in the office, thanks for hanging with us. We'll see you next week.
All right, cheers.